Ended early Sunday morning with the motorist, a black male, being brutally beaten and kicked by Los Angeles police officers. A beating that continued even as the man appeared to offer no resistance.
All of a sudden, police brutality had a human face, and it was being battered by Los Angeles cops on a neighborhood street in the San Fernando Valley. The face belonged to Rodney King, a 25-year-old high school dropout with a criminal record. He had been convicted of second-degree robbery, and he was out on parole.
The motorist was apparently shot by a taser gun, which is used to electrically shock a suspect into submission. But police also stomped on the man's head and repeatedly kicked him before both his wrists and ankles were bound.
All of it happened right over here.
Among the eyewitnesses at the scene, there was disagreement over what and who had started.
One guy in particular that just hit him and hit him and hit him and hit him, and he just wouldn't stop.
The cops said they suspected King was high on drugs, that he was belligerent and resisting arrest. King said they never let up.
They continued to pound on me and beat on me, all over my body, all over my body. They beat where it hurt, in my ankles. They beat my whole body where it hurt. It hurt real bad because it was hit with a stick. And the same with my face, my jaw. I was scared. I was scared for my life.
He was taken by rescue ambulance to nearby Pacific.
That was unlike any other police department in the country.
But Chief Darrell Gates was vociferous in defending the department, a department with a reputation for modern high-tech weaponry and tactics.
I would hope the public would not, on the basis of this one tape, make up their minds about the Los Angeles Police Department. We don't train our officers to do this kind of thing, and lastly, we don't
a body to the neighborhoods. But those kinds of incidents, from my perspective, were not unusual.
But this time the case went to a grand jury. 11 days later, they handed down indictments.
4 Los Angeles policemen face felony charges tonight in the notorious videotape beating of a black motorist that stunned the nation earlier this month. 40-year-old Sergeant Stacy Kuhn, officers Ted Brazino, Larry Powell, and Tim Wind made a brief court appearance today after being named in a 5-count indictment. Kuhn, whose job was to keep his officers in line that night, faces the most charges. Seen here, holding an electric stun gun, the wires still attached to 25-year-old Rodney King, Kuhn is accused of assault, intentional great bodily harm, and later attempting a cover-up. Officers Powell, a veteran, and Wind, a rookie, also face assault charges. Veteran officer Ted Brazino, 38 years old, is seen shouting at the downed motorist and then walking over and stomping on his head.
Prosecute the 15 Gates must go.
The indictments intensified demands for Chief Gates' resignation. Gates said he wasn't leaving, but he moved to fire Wind, a rookie, and to suspend the other 3 without pay. But then the legal case against the 4 appeared to grow even stronger.
Newly released police computer messages have stoked the political firestorm, car-to-car exchanges that night suggesting racist attitudes. Of a domestic dispute involving African Americans that occurred before the King beating, one squad messaged, "It was right out of Gorillas in the Mist." That car was manned by officers Larry Powell and Timothy Wind, both indicted last week in the King attack. It's not clear who operated the computer, but after that incident, one of them typed, "I haven't beaten anyone this bad in a long time." And over their police radio, laughter as they called an ambulance for the hog-tied and beaten motorist. This from a supervising sergeant to a command center. You just had a big-time use of force, tased and beat the suspect of CHP pursuit, big time. The command center replied, "Oh well, I'm sure the lizard didn't deserve it. Ha ha."
It's done to control an aggressive, combative suspect, and sometimes police work is brutal. That's just a fact of life.
On cross-examination, the prosecution could not shake Kuhn's story.
And is that the Los Angeles Police Department policy, that is, to keep hitting somebody with the baton until the person complies?
Yes, sir.
That's what the Los Angeles Police Department teaches?
That's true, sir.
To hit somebody until he complies?
That's correct.
Then, a bombshell. One of the 4 police officers turned against the other 3, saying he thought they had overreacted.
What I recall was I didn't see Mr. King moving, and I thought Officer Powell was out of control then.
Ted Brazino was the one cop who broke ranks and testified against his fellow officers.
I didn't understand what was going on out there. I just didn't understand it. It didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't see why they were doing what they were doing.
Well, did you think it was right or wrong or what?
Wrong.
All right.
Despite Brasino's bombshell, the defense offered the mainly white middle-class jury powerful reasons why it should ignore Brasino's testimony and acquit the 4 officers.
These officers, these defendants, do not get paid to lose street fights.
Only 4 officers stand trial, but their attorneys want the jury to believe much more is at stake. They argued that guilty verdicts would be a blow to police authority and invite anarchy.
And this is not a game out there. This is real life.
That is a job that falls to these police officers. The line between chaos and society.
But Prosecutor White fought back. It was an embarrassment, he said, even a tragedy, that the officers were hiding behind their badges.
I knew at one point I would hear about the thin blue line. It is embarrassing to every man and woman across this country who puts on a uniform every day and goes out and does their job, and they follow the law.
Were found not guilty on all but 1 count.
Reaction to the verdicts was swift.
This is not going to end. They just started a war. They just declared a war.
What are we supposed to go back and do? My people are going to be upset, to say the least. They hurt. We've seen one injustice after another.
The jury's verdict will never outlive the images of the savage beating, seared forever into our minds and our souls.
I am thoroughly convinced, as were the others, I believe, that Mr. King was in full control of the whole situation at all times. He was not writhing in pain. He was moving to get away from the officers. And he gave every indication that he was under PCP.
And she added she thought the prosecution made a big mistake by not putting Rodney King on the stand.
I personally would like to have seen him, to have listened to him, but the prosecutors decided not to bring him on board, so that wasn't an equation that we could look at in making our conclusion.
We've received a lot of criticism for not calling Mr. King at this trial. We didn't want to make Mr. King the focus of the trial. We wanted the focus to be on the defendants.
The Rodney King verdicts came at a particular point in the history of Los Angeles where the city was like a powder keg.
There's gonna be some hell gonna break out. It's gonna be a riot. I'm not lying. Think I'm playing? Why you think they closed down all the stores? It's gonna be some shit. It was on film. We saw him beating that man. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. And we're not gonna stand for it.
What you're watching is the genesis of a riot. Not long after the King verdicts, police find themselves being swallowed up in a neighborhood that is seething.
Location near the intersection of Florence Boulevard and Normandy Avenue in the mostly black ghetto of South Central Los Angeles, where police were called to control angry protesters.
They had come to arrest some men for bothering a store owner, but it clearly wasn't going well. And soon came the order many officers would later regret. Get out of here, Code 3. What they left behind was a pressure cooker on high. Had the police stood their ground on this spot, what happened next might not have happened. The crowd, becoming angrier by the minute, surged down the sidewalk to that intersection, which for 2 hours would become LA's hell on earth. Anyone who wasn't black was a target. Rocks hit one car that careens out of control. The driver pays the price for being Latino. In the utter chaos, he leaves a woman behind, dazed. 2 squad cars race through without stopping. The police will not come back. Later, some officers say it was a disgrace they didn't. The crowd is in a bloodthirsty frenzy now. They swarm over this car whose driver is Asian, pull him out, and beat him.
One of the people who got caught in that intersection was Reginald Denny, who was driving a cement truck.
This new video shows him being pulled from the cab, then lying in the street after his vicious beating, then clawing the air for help.
Denny was finally rescued by African Americans who saw the attack on television. But that moment was lost in the chaos of Florence and Normandy. Across town at police headquarters, where a crowd of protesters had assembled, Police Chief Darrell Gates was nowhere to be found. He was attending a fundraiser in Brentwood, a fundraiser that would keep him out of touch for several critical hours, hours in which the rioting across the city quickly got out of control.
These people are angry. They have every right to be.
The anger kept pouring out. Crowds soon began throwing rocks and bottles and setting fires. Still, the police held back. The greedy began looting, and it continued for hours, unchecked.
By nightfall, the scene at police headquarters had turned ugly.
A crowd of several hundred tried to rush the building. They taunted patrolmen who stood shoulder to shoulder in riot gear. Unable to provoke a fight, the angry mob roamed at will through downtown Los Angeles, trying to set government buildings on fire, breaking whatever they could, torching cars.
The rioting, at first concentrated in South Los Angeles, spread to other areas of the city, to the Crenshaw district, to Santa Monica, even to the fringes of Hollywood. At 9 p.m., 5 hours after the verdict, Mayor Bradley declared a local state of emergency, and he asked California Governor Pete Wilson to activate 2,000 National Guardsmen. Every cop in the city was ordered to report for duty. Fire alarms were coming in at the rate of 3 a minute.
There have been riots of looting downtown, but right now what I want to show you is they have started fires down at the end of the street. That's where the crowd has, they've kind of made a circle downtown. They went through, looted the Justice Building, City Hall, breaking buildings, and there were several police officers drawing their guns.
Outside Los Angeles, there soon would be scattered echoes of violence as well. Seattle, San Francisco, Tampa, Birmingham, Atlanta, Las Vegas, and back in Los Angeles.
This is the latest stuff that was shot by the CBS crew that have been roving, and they said that they have hit every single building in the downtown area.
The only one was bleeding is Rodney King, you know what I'm saying? It's all for him, you know what I'm saying? Peace, Rodney King, peace!
Daylight didn't stop mobs of looters from ransacking stores, and neither did police, patrolling the sidelines and mostly outnumbered.
Why are you taking this?
Why? Because it's free. You have to do that. You know, people working hard to make a business. You know, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But let the other people do it. So, come on, everybody!
As the rioting and looting continued unabated into its second day, Mayor Bradley imposed a dusk-to-dawn curfew. The L.A. police appeared helpless in the face of so much violence.
We were simply overwhelmed and not able to get to some of those incidents that we regret not getting to.
That's why word that the National Guard was on the scene brought some hope that the rioting could be controlled.
Busloads of National Guardsmen are arriving at staging areas in Los Angeles. It's expected they will be in some of the neighborhoods later tonight, and they're getting here just in time.
But it was not to be. Bureaucratic wrangling over when and where the guardsmen ought to be deployed, plus an inexplicable delay in issuing live ammunition, allowed the looting and the fires to spread throughout the city.
You know, I built this from scratch, okay? Everything that I own is in there. The black who have businesses, they're the losers. We lose all the time.
With police nowhere to be seen, many proprietors armed themselves and tried, mostly without success, to defend their stores from the looting and arson.
Someone ought to ask that cop right there who's parked to check that Cadillac. But he won't. He's going to drive by here and smile at us. Watch.
As the death toll mounted, the disruption of city services spread. Bus service was halted. Too dangerous, say officials.
Hopefully they will go home tonight, get a good night's rest, and decide that this is nonsense and they ought to stop it.
Ammunition sales are banned, gasoline sales restricted. Schools and most public buildings are closed. along with all 90 branches of the Wells Fargo Bank. Baseball, basketball, and horse racing all canceled.
By nightfall, the epidemic of anger had set the skyline ablaze. 1,500 separate fires going at the same time, according to one fire department count.
Each time a count is made, another one pops up. Fire officials say it's simply impossible to keep up with all of them. In many instances, the fires are started after a store has been looted. Just as the looters move away, somebody throws a gasoline bomb and the flames explode.
We're running out of men and equipment. These guys are local guys. They live here, and they're helping us with the fire.
The crisis brought out the best in some, the worst in others. Watch as these people silently, methodically loot a grocery store as if nothing is wrong, oblivious to the camera, unafraid of the police.
Even as the rioting continued, recriminations began about the police department's abrupt withdrawal from Florence and Normandy in the first hours of the violence.
If Daryl Gates and his top officers had provided adequate police protection for that area, it would not have spread, would not have caused the damage throughout the city. And this is the man who, Daryl Gates, who said he had a plan. What was his plan? Was his plan to pull out of that area, to not afford proper police protection? And we think he would only do that in that area because it's a racist policy.
In fact, the LA riot looked like a black and white race war. What was scarcely noticed in media accounts at the time was the role of Hispanics, who were both protagonists and victims of the mayhem.
South Central is Latino. That's why we're 44% of the city's population. And people didn't understand that. They thought it was African American. And so where you have the areas of the civil unrest, by far the majority of the people were Latino. And the media, again, was failing in picking that up.
So what had started as a riot involving mostly blacks turned into a riot that involved mostly Hispanics in terms of arrests. But even as the ethnic character of the riot changed, the death toll continued to rise.
In 3 days of violence this week, at least 37 people have been killed, more than 1,300 injured. There have been more than 3,000 arrests. Property damage over $200 million.
As the violence continued, there was a moment of high drama.
Just a few short minutes ago, the man whose name came to symbolize this crisis made his first public appearance in 14 months. A shaken Rodney King appealed for an end to the violence.
People, I just want to say, you know, can we all get along? Can we get along? Can we stop making it horrible for the older people and the kids? And I mean, we've got enough smog here in Los Angeles, let alone to deal with setting these fires and things. It's just not right. It's not right, and it's not gonna change anything. We'll get our justice. They've won the battle, but they haven't won the war.
That very night, President Bush ordered 5,000 federal troops into Los Angeles to help control the violence. In a nationally televised address, he appealed for calm, and he announced that the 4 officers might face federal civil rights charges.
What you saw and what I saw on the TV video was revolting. I felt anger. I felt pain. I thought, how can I explain this to my grandchildren?
Whether it was the arrival of federal troops or Rodney King's dramatic plea, as the weekend arrived, it was clear that the massive military and police presence had finally brought Los Angeles under control. By Sunday, May 3rd, only a few scattered incidents were reported and no new major fires.
The smoke is no longer billowing out over the city. Downtown Los Angeles last night resembled an armed camp. Police presence, military presence on every corner, guarding stores that were looted.
I hear the sound of the army of the Lord.
There was a very hopeful sign in South Central yesterday. Hundreds upon hundreds of people from all over the city, black, white, Latino, all races came together with shovels and brooms and mops, trying to literally use household weapons to clean up the streets after a riot. It was a very moving scene.
But for many, there was nothing worth cleaning up. With devastating suddenness, the riot had wiped out their hopes and years of hard work.
Richard Park returned to the scene of the battle today. With guns drawn, he and an employee had tried to hold off perhaps 300 looters. You shot in the air?
Yeah, I shot in the air. And
the looters fired back. Park's sister and sister-in-law were both wounded. Were you afraid for your life?
Yeah, first time I afraid of my life. First time.
After the family fled, the store was stripped and wrecked.
They tried to kill me. Why do they want to kill me? I don't do anything bad to them.
It's a story repeated over and over by Korean business people in Los Angeles.
This is America. We have to stand our pride. Human dignity. Where's your human dignity?
As Los Angeles began
Case of police abuse.
The defendants are charged with stomping, kicking, and beating. Mr. King, therefore, it was an unreasonable use of force.
That was the charge against officers Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, and Theodore Brazino. Their sergeant, Stacy Kuhn, who never struck King, was indicted separately for not trying to stop the beating.
The second indictments caused some uneasiness among attorneys, even among attorneys who specialized in police brutality cases.
Indicting anybody for the same crime twice is an abomination. It's unfair. It's a perversion of the double jeopardy laws, and it never should be done in a democracy.
But in the city's black community, where people have felt victimized by police, there was a feeling of vindication.
I'm glad to see that it happened. Basically, those 4 officers just got away with, they got away with almost murder.
If those officers that beat up Rodney King, at least one of them doesn't get convicted, they'll be all right? They'll be one.
But 2 years later, Los Angeles had changed. Police Chief Gerald Gates had resigned in the spring of 1993, replaced by Willie Williams, an African-American from Philadelphia. Nonetheless, the city was tense as the second trial got underway.
Racist beatings have to stop.
While protesters chanted outside a federal courthouse in Los Angeles today, inside, jury selection began. And defense attorneys continued.
Officer Theodore Brazino and rookie policeman Timothy Wind, who appeared to play relatively minor roles in the beating, were found not guilty.